Right, for some more reaction to the cabinet reshuffle, joined now by Leader of the Opposition, John Steenhuisen. Good to have you, and thank you very much for your time tonight. Not much of an overhaul as we would have expected, but the President saying he's filling vacancies. Let's talk about the vacancies being filled, and then we'll talk about what has not been changed. But let's look at the two ministries that the President has created, Electricity and Minister of Planning and Evaluation. Is there a need for those ministries?
Well, I don't think you need to have ministries for them, but I think the President has wasted a huge opportunity here to do something grand and great with that position, and that would have been to bring in somebody from the outside, someone from industry, somebody from big business who had experience with dealing with the energy crisis and putting them into that position. Instead, we've got a recycled former mayor of Tshwane, an ANC hack that's been put in there, and someone who's been hanging around the presidency for the last few years and who left Tshwane under a huge cloud in this position. And I just don't think it's going to move the needle in terms of inspiring the confidence that's required that we're really going to get through this load shedding. We've had ANC hacks in charge of the energy crisis since 2015, and it's got worse every year. It hasn't got better. This was an opportunity to really do something different. I think you also need to realize what the President's done tonight is expand the cabinet even further.
That's right. Yeah.
2019, he promised us we're going to do a review and we're going to cut down the cabinet. It's been expanded, and each of those ministers comes with a 40 million rand a year price tag that you and I and the people watching at home have to pay for. So now we've added more layers of ministers to the mix rather than actually getting somebody in who's going to be able to be a bunker-busting bomb and get to the bottom of the energy crisis in South Africa.
Do you think it's a pipe dream or a promise that the President makes that will never happen? This proposal that he says he's putting in place to streamline the departments, that in the 7th administration we apparently will have lesser departments.
Well, he's not going to be in power in the 7th administration, so that is the pipe dream for him. He's got 15 months left to go of this term. It's unlikely that that review is going to be implemented anyway. This is the team the President's going to now back with going into the election, and what a gift for the opposition it is. And we look forward to taking the team. But this will be the last time the President's got a majority in Parliament, and so the next cabinet will not be of his choosing.
It seems to have formed now a triangle around this issue of energy, because you've got public enterprises, you've got energy minister already at loggerheads. You're bringing in a minister of electricity to say, try and coordinate this too. How do you see it as a Democratic Alliance?
Well, it's already on the rocks, because we had Minister Mantashe telling us in the debate on the reply to the SONA that this person was going to be, and I quote, a project manager, not a minister. So I don't know, does this mean this person's going to get the kiddies chair at the cabinet table, or are they actually going to be given the power to do what needs to be done? But clearly, you've already had the infighting between Gordon and Mantashe. You're now adding a third person into the mix and potentially a fourth person, because remember, we're in a state of disaster, so the Cogta minister is now also going to have to be involved in this. You've now got 4 people all slugging it out for the steering wheel over the electricity crisis. I think we're in Alice in Wonderland territory here once again, and sadly, it's a pity that the country's most pressing, clear and present danger to our economy and social well-being is being treated in this way by the presidency.
It doesn't have political responsibility, authority and control over all critical aspects of the energy action plan. Okay, that's where the control and authority sits. But then he also says he's looking at Section 97 of the Constitution to transfer certain powers and functions contained in the relevant legislation.
Well, you can have all the powers and functions on paper in the world. If you come up against the brick wall that is Minister Mantashe, as many other people have found to their peril, including Mr. De Ruyter and other ministers, Minister Gordon and others, it's another thing altogether. Mr. Mantashe has been the single biggest obstacle to energy reform in the country, because he digs his heels in and prevents any of these reforms from taking place. And that has been his modus operandi. He's the man who will not be moved, who's stuck in the outmoded ideology. And if Mr. Ramokgopa thinks that he's going to get Mr. Mantashe out the way, well, I think he's got another thing coming, and that is the problem. It would be better just to create a single person, to free their hands and to give them the single job of getting electricity and power back in the grid and using their international or local expertise to be able to do that. We've just added more ministers into the mix, and you're going to end up ruining the dish because too many cooks are going to spoil that broth.
Let's look then at what didn't change, John. You were calling for police minister change. You were calling for, those two we've spoken about, energy and public enterprise. Didn't get the minister change in police. We didn't get a minister change in education. Didn't get a minister change in public enterprises or even at Treasury.
Yeah, well, the president's run out of road, and, the cabinet's become a way to balance the competing factions and fractions within the president's own situation. He knows that he can't get rid of Becky clearly because he's in a precarious position in KwaZulu-Natal, despite the fact that he's been the worst police minister in post-democratic South Africa and has presided over a situation where 80 of our countrymen and women are murdered every single day in the streets, in their homes, and in their businesses. And yet he retains his position. And Angie Motshekga has presided over a full generation now of school leavers who are not equipped, not trained to be able to meet the modern world, and yet she continues in her position. And it's clearly the fact that the president has run out of political capital to be able to make the big, bold moves that would be required. Imagine the opportunity that this cabinet reshuffle was to bring in new energy, new dynamism into some of those key lever portfolios like police, like education. Instead, it's the same old people sitting around the same old table making the same bad decisions that got us into this mess in the first place. And to think that it's going to suddenly change because you've made a few cosmetic changes and put some lipstick on the pig, it's not going to change. It's the same people sitting around that table making the same bad decisions.
Deputy President Paul Mashatile is now been appointed. Now, lots been said around the Deputy President's office when Didi Mabuza was in there, and whether or not half the time he was present, or whether he really did do much in that office. His office will tell you that he did achieve quite a lot. What do you expect from Paul Mashatile?
Well, we certainly hope he'll spend less time in Moscow than his predecessor, and I'm surprised the President didn't announce that Mr. Mabuza was going to be our new High Commissioner in Moscow. And I certainly hope that we can nail him down before he departs the country. I wish Mr. Mashatile well. I think it's the Deputy President position has been the ANC's tradition to put their deputy president of the organization in that position. Mr. Mashatile won at that particular Congress, and obviously, we wish him success and hope that as the leader of government business, he will be far more successful in getting ministers to appear in Parliament to do and discharge their parliamentary obligations than his predecessor did.
John Steenhuisen, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on and for your reaction tonight. Leader of the Democratic Alliance there, John Steenhuisen, reacting to the announcement of that cabinet reshuffle.